Can you believe it? Bernard Arnault, the world's richest man on any given Tuesday, casually strolling through Shanghai. You'd expect him to pop into his own Louis Vuitton flagship, maybe check on Dior's quarterly numbers, right? But he walked straight past his empire and into Chinese luxury stores. Bought handbags from a local brand called Songmont. Spent half an hour muttering exquisite and interesting at a homegrown jeweler called Laopu Gold, a shop sitting right next to Cartier and Van Cleef. Now, when the guy who invented modern luxury is window shopping at stores that aren't his own, you know something absolutely wild is happening. Welcome to the luxury apocalypse nobody saw coming. Let's rewind. For 20 years, the global luxury market was essentially printing money. The sector almost tripled in value. Everyone wanted a piece of the European dream, the craftsmanship, the heritage, the little logos that whispered, "I made it," without saying a word. And China? China was the golden goose that kept laying platinum eggs. By 2023, Asia, led by China, represented the biggest slice of the global luxury revenue pie. Bigger than North America. Bigger than Western Europe. We're talking tens of billions of dollars flowing into handbags, watches, and scarves that cost more than some people's cars. Chinese shoppers weren't just buying luxury. They were defining it. Young professionals in Shanghai carried Hermès. College students saved for months to afford a Gucci belt. Real estate agents celebrated deals with Rolex watches. The entire industry recalibrated around one question: what does China want next? Then 2019 happened, and here's where it gets interesting. About 2/3 of luxury goods bought by Chinese consumers weren't even purchased in China. They get them up in London, Paris, Milan, anywhere the exchange rates were better and the selection was wider. Travel was part of the luxury experience. But then COVID slammed the borders shut. Suddenly, all that spending came flooding back home. Luxury consumption inside China absolutely exploded from 2020 to 2023. Brands opened more stores. Malls expanded. Investors salivated. The party was supposed to last forever. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Fast forward to 2024, and suddenly the music stopped. Not gradually, violently. European luxury giants including LVMH, Kering, which owns Gucci, Moncler, and Burberry collectively shed hundreds of billions of dollars in market value. LVMH, the Goliath of luxury, recorded its worst annual performance since the 2008 financial crisis. Kering's stock plunged 60% from its 2021 peak. In the US, Estée Lauder shares dropped 76% from their high. And in Beijing, that unfinished luxury complex, the one that was supposed to be the city's hottest destination for European high fashion, sits there like a monument to overconfidence. Scaffolding and silence. A paused heartbeat in marble and glass. So what the hell happened? The most obvious culprit? China's economy hit a wall. And that wall was made of real estate. For decades, property wasn't just housing in China. It was the entire wealth creation strategy. Families poured their savings into apartments. Not to live in, to invest. Real estate was safer than stocks, more reliable than pensions, and the closest thing to a guaranteed ladder up the social hierarchy. Middle-class households treated property like Westerners treat 401k. It was the future, locked in concrete. Then the property market imploded. Prices fell. Developers defaulted. The guaranteed investment turned into a trap. Suddenly, spending thousands on a handbag doesn't feel aspirational. It feels reckless. Irresponsible. Like showing up to a funeral in a party dress. Luxury depends on one essential ingredient: optimism. You need people who believe tomorrow will be better than today. That their career is on an upward trajectory. That splurging now is celebrating future success. When that belief evaporates, even the most beautiful object becomes impossible to justify. A Dior bag isn't just expensive, it's evidence of poor judgment. Now, let's layer in another problem. Youth unemployment in China skyrocketed. We're talking rates significantly higher than the national average, hitting the exact demographic that luxury brands had bet their entire growth strategy on. Here's why that matters. Luxury doesn't actually need rich people to grow, it needs aspirational people. And in the 2010s, China had millions of them. More than half of China's wealthiest luxury shoppers in recent years were born after 1990. They were young, hungry, willing to sacrifice now for the image they wanted to project later. But when job prospects dim, aspiration turns into anxiety. Spending shifts from signaling success to preserving safety. That Gucci belt stops being a milestone and starts being a liability. One former influencer, Zhulin Chen, watched this transformation up close. She'd built a massive following in Chinese social media promoting designer fashion, working with international brands desperate to crack the Chinese market. In 2019, she quit her corporate job at JP Morgan to go full-time into e-commerce and live-stream sales. The timing couldn't have been worse or more revealing. She started noticing a shift in her followers' messages. They weren't asking about the next handbag drop anymore. They were talking about mental health. About feeling empty after buying everything. About realizing that consumption didn't actually make them happier, it just made them broke. So she pivoted. Stopped selling products, started hosting wellness workshops and retreats. Her audience didn't want things anymore. They wanted experiences. They wanted to feel something real. And that shift? It wasn't just her followers. It was an entire generation recalibrating their relationship with success. While all this was unfolding, something quieter but equally devastating was happening online: the rise of dupes. Not your grandmother's cheap knockoffs. These are high-quality alternatives that look nearly identical to luxury goods but cost a fraction of the price. And they're thriving on e-commerce platforms. Here's the genius part: many of them don't even use logos. They're not pretending to be Hermès or Dior, they're offering the aesthetic, the quality, and the satisfaction without the price tag or the pretense. Unless you see the receipt, good luck telling them apart. For consumers who were already feeling buyer's remorse, who were questioning whether a logo was worth the markup, dupes became an easy answer. Same look, same photos for Instagram, but you're not hemorrhaging money you might need in 6 months. Here's where LVMH and other European luxury giants made a critical miscalculation. For years, their strategy in China had been the same playbook that worked everywhere else: raise prices, tighten supply, emphasize exclusivity. Create scarcity, charge more, watch demand increase. It's luxury economics 101. Except in China's new reality, those tactics backfired hard. Price hikes felt disconnected from reality. When people are watching their property values collapse and their job security evaporate, a 15% price increase on an already expensive handbag doesn't signal prestige, it signals tone deafness. LVMH's response? Double down on VIP clients. Host exclusive exhibitions, private fashion shows, intimate concerts for the ultra-wealthy who can still afford to spend. Smart? Sure. Effective at preserving margins? Absolutely. But here's the problem: VIP clients can't replace volume. The middle tier, the aspirational consumers who made up the growth engine, was gone. And no amount of champagne-soaked private events could bring them back. While Western brands floundered, something extraordinary was happening in the shadows. Chinese luxury brands were eating their lunch. And not by being cheaper. By being smarter. Take Songmont, the minimalist leather goods brand where Bernard Arnault bought handbags. Their bucket bags, described by social media users as alternatives to Hermès Picotin lock bags, sell for around $421 while Hermès charges between $5,000 and $8,000 for theirs. But here's what's wild: according to Big One Labs data, Songmont's online bag sales grew about 90% over 2 years. Meanwhile, Gucci's online bag sales in China slumped more than 50%. Michael Kors dropped 40%. Or look at Laopu Gold, that jeweler where Arnault lingered for half an hour. Their e-commerce sales surged more than 1,000% in the first 3 quarters compared to 2 years prior. On Tmall, China's largest online retailer, Laopu sold $630 million in 12 months. Van Cleef and Arpels? Just $57 million. Let that sink in. A homegrown Chinese brand is outselling a legendary French jeweler by more than 10 to 1 online. Malgoping Cosmetics, named after its celebrity founder, pulled in $125 million, more than doubling Bobbi Brown's sales. These aren't flukes. This is a pattern. So what are they doing differently? First, they're not competing on price alone. Yes, they're cheaper, but that's not the story they're selling. They're selling identity. Songmont's philosophy emphasizes Eastern aesthetics. Their store designs reflect Chinese calligraphy. Their marketing focuses on the lives of urban women, celebrating self-worth and diverse life values rather than social hierarchy. They launched a podcast that resonates because it doesn't ask consumers to prove anything. It invites them in. As Songmont founder Fu Song put it, in the global fashion conversation, there are still too few Chinese voices. And young Chinese consumers heard that loud and clear. For someone like Wani Huan, a 30-year-old Shanghai finance worker, the shift was personal. She used to be a self-described Hermès and Tom Ford addict. Now she carries a $210 Songmont hobo bag and wears Malgoping makeup. Her explanation? I fell into the trap of consumerism when I was younger. Now I just want things I truly like. That's not a rejection of luxury. That's a rejection of performance. Here's another thing Chinese brands understood better than anyone: digital culture. Western luxury brands treated e-commerce like a necessary evil. Something to tolerate, maybe, but never fully embrace. Their real business was in the stores, the marble, the chandeliers, the salespeople who made you feel like you were being granted access to a private club. Chinese brands were born online. They understood that for young consumers, the experience is digital. The unboxing video, the Instagram story, the WeChat share, that's the luxury experience now. They mastered influencer marketing not by paying celebrities millions, but by building authentic narratives. They created content that felt personal, not transactional. They understood that modern shoppers don't want to be sold to, they want to be seen. There's one more thing worth addressing: the "made in China" stigma. For decades, made in China meant cheap, mass-produced, low quality. It was the opposite of luxury. But these new Chinese luxury brands are flipping that narrative entirely. Icicle bought a garment factory in 2013 that manufactures for Max Mara. Songmont uses full-grain top-layer cowhide and gold-plated hardware, crafted by artisans with decades of traditional sewing experience. Laopu Gold incorporates elaborate filigreed shapes and enamel glazes that require serious craftsmanship. They're not hiding their Chinese manufacturing, they're celebrating it. They're telling stories about the artisans, the techniques, the heritage. They're saying, luxury isn't about where it's made. It's about how it's made. And it's working. Now, before you think this is just a China story, let me stop you. This is a global story that happened to hit China first. Shoppers everywhere are becoming more discerning. Inflation, geopolitical uncertainty, and consumer fatigue are reshaping luxury markets from New York to London to Tokyo. People are questioning values. They're asking whether a brand still deserves its price when they keep raising it every year. They're wondering if exclusivity is real or just manufactured marketing. That scarcity meant desirability. That logo meant status. Now consumers are calling their bluff. They realize that $400 bags can look as good as $4,000 bags. Those experiences create more lasting happiness than objects. China didn't create these trends. China just felt them first, and harder. According to Bain, China's luxury market, dominated by LVMH, Kering, and Burberry, shrank by as much as 20% in 2024. Its steepest decline since at least 2011. LVMH and European luxury giants aren't finished. They have brand power, global scale, and craftsmanship that few can match. They've survived crashes, wars, and pandemics. They'll survive this. But effortless growth is over. What's next requires humility. Stop dictating luxury, start listening to consumers. Localize thinking, not just stores. Develop emotional intelligence, not just operational excellence. LVMH is pivoting to India, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, hoping to find the next China. But there is no next China, not in scale, speed, or concentrated purchasing power. Chinese brands face obstacles too. Few have crossed 10 billion yuan, $1.8 billion in annual revenue. The same economic malaise hurting European brands could spread domestically. Luxury growth needs rising wages and a growing middle class, both challenged by economic headwinds. The top 10 best-selling brands in China's personal luxury segment are still Western brands, accounting for 63% of the market. No Chinese brand has more than 0.5% market share. What Chinese brands have is momentum and cultural relevance. What Western brands have is legacy and scale. The battle isn't over. It's just beginning. That unfinished luxury complex in Beijing, wrapped in scaffolding and silence, isn't abandoned. It's paused. Waiting. It's the perfect metaphor. The luxury industry isn't dead. It's recalibrating, trying to understand consumers who want different things now, trying to rebuild a promise that feels true again. Those unfinished stores may eventually open. The lights may eventually return. But the silence they represent, the moment when growth stopped feeling inevitable, when consumers stopped chasing logos, when China said enough, that silence won't be forgotten. Because this wasn't just an economic correction. This was something deeper. China didn't just stop buying luxury. China grew up. The luxury industry spent decades telling China what sophistication looked like. Now China is returning the favor, showing luxury what evolution looks like. The question isn't whether LVMH and its European rivals will survive. The question is whether they'll learn fast enough. Whether they'll adapt with the humility required to win back trust. Whether they'll stop seeing China as a problem to solve and start seeing it as a teacher with hard lessons. Because right now, the most valuable luxury brand in China might not be the one with the most famous logo. It might be the one that actually listens. Maybe Bernard Arnault is ready to figure out. The party might be over. But the story? The story is just getting interesting.